Let's begin with the fundamentals. A lake is a standing body of fresh water, completely surrounded by land, that exists long enough to develop its own distinct ecological processes. Think of it as a world in a basin. Most of the natural lakes we see today were carved out by powerful geological forces. Massive glaciers scoured the earth, leaving depressions that filled with meltwater. The slow, immense pressure of tectonic plates shifting created deep valleys. Sometimes a landslide blocks a river, damming its flow. In other cases, a simple hollow in the landscape gradually fills with rainfall and seeping groundwater. Each origin story gives a lake its unique character. But not all lakes are born from geology. Many are man-made, built to serve human needs. We call these reservoirs. They are created by constructing dams across rivers, intentionally excavating large pits, or reshaping the landscape to hold water. Whether a lake is natural or artificial, the same physical and biological rules apply. Once water fills a basin, it begins to behave as a living freshwater ecosystem, a world governed by sunlight, temperature, and chemistry and biology. To truly understand a lake, you can't just look at the water itself. You have to look at the land around it. Every single lake sits inside a watershed. Imagine the lake is the water at the bottom of a giant bowl. The entire inner surface of that bowl is its watershed, the total land area where every drop of rainfall, every bit of snowmelt, and all the flowing groundwater eventually drains toward that central point. This connection is absolute. What happens on the land directly influences the water. A farm field, a dense forest, a manicured lawn, or a paved road. Each contributes its own signature to the water entering the lake, carrying with it nutrients, sediments, or pollutants. This brings us to a lake's circulation. Think of it like a hydrologic budget. Water enters the system through various deposits, streams flowing in, groundwater seeping up from below, and rain falling directly onto its surface. And water makes withdrawals too, exiting through a single river or stream outlet, evaporating, or by slowly seeping back into the ground. The rate of these inflows and outflows, what we call its residence time, is critical. It determines how quickly water moves through the system, what level of nutrients it holds, and how fast the lake can respond to stress, whether it's recovering from pollution or adapting to a drought. This leads to a crucial point. Lakes are incredibly sensitive systems. The reason for this sensitivity lies in their fundamental design. Unlike a river, which acts like a conveyor belt, constantly flushing water and materials downstream, a lake is a closed basin. It doesn't flush rapidly. What enters a lake, whether it's nutrients from fertilizer, sediment from erosion, or organic matter from falling leaves, tends to stay there for a very long time. Over years, decades, and centuries, lakes become accumulators. They trap inorganic sediment, fine particles of sand, silt, and clay washed in from the watershed. They collect nutrients in their sediments, like phosphorus and nitrogen, which act as fertilizers for aquatic life. They gather organic debris, sunken logs, dead algae, decaying plants. Once these materials are inside the lake, they don't just sit there. They're constantly recycled and reused. Nutrients are taken up by algae, which are then eaten by microscopic animals, which are then eaten by fish. Land-based predators such as birds, otters, and fishermen catch fish and take them out of the lake. This is the food web that naturally maintains a channel for clearing nutrients from a lake. But if the food web becomes impaired and nutrient clearance restricted, endless nutrient recycling sets in. This internal recycling engine drives long-term ecological change, a deterioration. And because this change is so slow and cumulative, a lake can be in decline for years without showing obvious signs of trouble. It's a gradual shift. The water might lose a little clarity each year, a certain fish species might become slightly less common,
These changes are easy to miss until a critical threshold is crossed, and the symptoms suddenly become impossible to ignore, like a widespread algal bloom or a fish kill. To understand how these changes happen, we need to look at the lake's internal structure. Let's imagine we can slice a lake in half and view it in cross-section. We would see that it's not just one uniform body of water. It's organized into three main vertical layers, each with profoundly different conditions of light, temperature, and oxygen. The first layer at the very top is the surface layer, technically called the epilimnion. This is the face the lake shows the world. It's warmer because it's heated by the sun. It's well lit, allowing sunlight to penetrate deep within it. And it's rich in oxygen, which is mixed in from the atmosphere by wind and waves. This is the zone of production. It's where most photosynthesis occurs, as microscopic algae or phytoplankton convert sunlight into energy.
It's where you'll find the most activity with phytoplankton, zooplankton, and fish thriving in the bright, oxygenated water. Beneath that is layer 2, the middle layer, known as the metalimnion. This layer is defined by one thing: rapid temperature change. If you were to lower a thermometer through the water, you'd see the temperature hold steady in the epilimnion and then suddenly plummet within this thin transitional zone. This sharp temperature gradient is called the thermocline, and it acts as a physical barrier. The warm, less dense water of the surface simply cannot easily mix with the cold, denser water below it. This barrier forms during the warm months of the year and is one of the most important features in a lake's life. Below the thermocline is layer 3, the deep layer, or the hypolimnion. This is the cold, dark, and isolated part of the lake. Sunlight doesn't reach here, so there is no photosynthesis. Because the thermocline cuts it off from the surface, oxygen cannot be easily replenished. The oxygen that is present gets slowly consumed by bacteria as they decompose all the organic matter that rains down from the layers above. This makes the hypolimnion the most sensitive part of the entire lake system, highly vulnerable to oxygen depletion. This layering, known as stratification, is driven by the seasons. In summer, the lake is strongly stratified. The sun beats down, creating a warm, buoyant top layer, while the deep water remains cold and heavy. The thermocline acts like a lid, locking them apart. This separation is vital because it stops oxygen from moving from the air into the deep water, where decomposition is constantly using it up. Then, as autumn arrives, the air cools, and so does the surface water. As it cools, it becomes denser. Eventually, the surface water becomes colder and denser than the water below it. When that happens, it sinks. This sinking action triggers a complete top-to-bottom mixing of the lake. We call this event the fall turnover. It's a traumatic reset. The entire water column churns, bringing life-giving oxygen from the surface down to the depths and pulling nutrient-rich water from the bottom back up to the surface, where it will fuel life the following spring. In winter, the lake stratifies again, but in a different way. The coldest water, just above freezing, sits at the surface, often under a layer of ice. But because water is most dense at 4 degrees Celsius, the very bottom of the lake is typically a few degrees warmer than the surface. With ice cover and shorter days, light penetration is low, and photosynthesis nearly grinds to a halt. Then comes spring. The ice melts, the sun warms the surface, and the winds begin to stir the water. As the entire lake reaches a uniform temperature, the density differences disappear, and the lake mixes once more. This spring turnover is the second great reset of the year, redistributing oxygen and nutrients and preparing the lake for the coming summer stratification. Finally, beyond the vertical layers, life in a lake is also organized into horizontal zones. Along the shallow shoreline is the littoral zone. Here, sunlight can reach all the way to the lakebed. This is the lake's garden. It's where rooted plants, reeds, and water lilies thrive. It's teeming with insects, snails, amphibians, and is a critical nursery for young fish seeking food and shelter. The littoral zone is a hub of high biodiversity. Out in the open water, you have the pelagic zone. This is the domain of phytoplankton and the zooplankton that graze on them. It's where larger fish migrate and feed. The primary engine of photosynthesis for the entire lake happens in the upper, sunlit waters of this zone. And finally, at the very bottom is the benthic zone, the lake bed itself. This zone is a world of sediment, low light, and decomposition. It's the lake's recycling center, where bacteria and other organisms break down dead organic material. This process is critical for nutrient cycling, but it consumes oxygen. The health of the benthic zone is sensitive to the oxygen levels in the water just above it. So, to summarize, a lake is a dynamic but sensitive freshwater system. Its character is shaped by how it was formed and the watershed that feeds it. Its internal life is organized by temperature-driven layers and the seasonal dance of stratification and turnover. And its biology is distributed across distinct ecological zones, from the sunlit shore to the dark bottom. Understanding these foundations, the anatomy of a lake, sets the stage for everything else. It allows us to understand why lakes decline, how we can measure their health, and what it takes to bring them back.
Now that we understand the physical house a lake lives in, we need to meet the inhabitants. Join us in Lesson 2, The Lake Ecosystem, where we look at the producers, consumers, and decomposers that turn these layers into a bustling underwater metropolis. To go to the next lesson, use the link below, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.